What's going on, guys? It's Jacob from Topside MMA, and today I'm bringing you my locks and traps video for UFC Vegas 109 Dolidze versus Hernandez. So you guys know the deal. We're going to go over my most confident to my least confident picks. We're going to rank them from the top being the locks all the way down to the bottom being the traps. So let's get right into it. First up, we got Joselyne Edwards versus Priscila Cachoeira. Now, I have Joselyne Edwards as a medium confidence pick here because she has the method to win this fight. She should be able to take it to the ground, control her on the ground, whether it's a submission or a decision win. I doubt a knockout, but it could happen. I just think Joselyne Edwards has a clear game plan on how to beat Cachoeira here. Now, we know Cachoeira, Zombie Girl, she has a tough time dealing with the ground game. She's a decent striker, and she wants to keep it on the feet. You know, she has the power to knock girls out, but she doesn't have the technical skills on the ground to be able to hang with the upper-level competition. I like Joselyne Edwards. You know, she's looking better and better with every fight, and, you know, she's really proven to us that she's well-rounded enough to be able to hang with someone like Cachoeira, who really doesn't offer a lot of technical prowess to really pose a threat for Joselyne Edwards that she hasn't seen before. And we know with Cachoeira, you know, she's just limited overall. If she can't keep it on the feet and if she can't knock people out, then she's going to struggle, which all of her previous fights have shown us that. So I think Joselyne Edwards has every skill set, every tool in the toolkit to be able to beat a girl like Cachoeira. I almost had her as a high confidence pick, but it's women's MMA. This likely goes over. So split decision on scorecards, anything can happen. But I think Joselyne Edwards has every way to win this fight. So next up, we got Steve Erceg versus Osbourne. Now, I put this as a medium confidence pick just because there's a couple things about this fight that could present some, I don't know, hiccups or road bumps that we're not expecting. So first of all, we know Osbourne is coming short notice into this fight. We know they're stepping up a weight class. They're fighting at bantamweight when they should be at flyweight. So there is going to be some uncertainty here. You know, maybe one of these guys looks a whole lot different than they have being up a weight class. You know, maybe Steve Erceg, yeah, he had chin problems in the past against Cachoeira, but, you know, maybe when he doesn't have to cut that much weight and he's fighting higher up, maybe he performs a little bit better. Maybe his chin holds up better. And the thing with Steve Erceg that I actually do like him in this fight is because he's coming off not a bad losing streak, but he's on a bit of a skid right now. And it's because he hasn't really stuck to what he's super good at. You know, we know he has the wrestling and grappling abilities to be able to hang. And we know that Osbourne, that's his main weakness. You know, he doesn't want to hang out on the ground too much. He wants to stand on the feet where he can strike. And I think Steve Erceg, he's gotten to the point in the UFC in his MMA career where he's been like, you know what, maybe I want to stand and strike some more. You know, like he's trying to become more well-rounded, branch beyond just being a grappler and a wrestler. You know, like he wants to evolve his game. And I think it's kind of probably cost him. Like maybe against that Cachoeira fight, we saw how Cachoeira got dominated by Pantoja on the ground. Maybe Erceg could have done more of that, you know, if he didn't go for a striking heavy game plan and if he didn't want to keep it on the feet as much. But maybe he's feeling himself, who knows. But Steve Erceg coming off of this bit of a skid he's on, I think he's going to be absolutely dialed in. I don't think he's going to mess around. He can't risk another loss. And the only way he's going to lose this fight is if he gets knocked out by Osbourne. He should be able to control him, take it to the ground. Osbourne is showing up on short notice, so his cardio is not going to be as good. I think Steve Erceg should be able to have his way, take it to the ground, dominate in the wrestling and the grappling, probably get a submission. Osbourne's been submitted multiple times, so that path is definitely there for him to win in that way. So I think everything points to Steve Erceg. I would have him higher up. It's just his chin problems. You know what I mean? Like maybe Osbourne is going to have a significant reach advantage here. He's the more powerful striker. He should be more dangerous on the feet. And we've seen Steve Erceg clipped before, knocked out. So there is that little hiccup. And with the whole weight class up, you know, maybe Osbourne takes even more power up to bantamweight. You know, maybe he hits even harder. Maybe Steve Erceg isn't going to be able to deal with that. There's a couple things that kind of throw you off in terms of this fight that are irregular aspects of it that can't make it super high confidence. So I have it as a decent medium confidence pick. But if this fight went 10 times over, I think Steve Erceg, as long as he's sticking to a smart game plan and taking it to the ground, should be able to win the majority of the times, especially given the fact that Osbourne is stepping up short notice. So anyway, next up, we got Smith versus Kazama. Now, I like Elijah Smith. He's a talented, up-and-coming prospect. He's looking good so far. His one fight against Vince Morales was a pretty good fight. It was a good test to show where his skill set is at. And, you know, I said in my last video, you know, Elijah Smith has had some cardio issues in the past. And I wanted to have him almost as a lock. I'll get into that here. But the cardio issues in the past, yes, he's worked on a lot of that, and he's looked a lot better like he did in his fight against Vince Morales in the UFC. But that has been a little bit of a hiccup that's prevented me from fully going all in on him. But in this fight, he should be a very high confidence pick because he's going against Toshiomi Kazama. Kazama is not a good striker, and he's chinny. Elijah Smith is a decent striker, and he has the better potential in the UFC. He has the much more higher skill cap for where he can go in the UFC. Now, Kazama, we've seen him struggle on the feet against every single fighter he's gone against in the UFC. His striking has just not developed. He really is a BJJ submission or bust type of guy, and I think he just doesn't have the tools to take it to the ground to be able to get that submission, because Elijah Smith has good wrestling. So, like, if Kazama was able to if he had some good wrestling background and he was able to maybe try and, like, use a good wrestling game to try and take it to the ground to go for a submission, maybe I'd be a little less confident in that. But Elijah Smith, out of either of these two, Elijah Smith is the only one who has any decent wrestling. We've seen Elijah Smith be able to wrestle. He can use it if he needs it in this fight. So there's really no way for Kazama to be able to take it to the ground unless Elijah Smith does something stupid and he goes for the ground or goes to the ground. You know, like, the only way for Elijah Smith to put this fight into a position for Kazama to win is if he messes up. So for that reason, you have to be confident in him. You know, he's going to be the better striker. He's going to have more power. He's going against a guy who's a bit of a crash out and who's a bit chinny, you know. And I don't think Elijah Smith's cardio is going to be a concern to the point of where he can't be a high confidence pick, because he's shown to improve that over the years. His one loss was because of that, but since then his cardio hasn't been an issue, so there's no reason for me to think that the cardio should be a big problem in this fight, especially because I don't think this fight goes all that long. You know, I think Kazama probably will try and wrestle and grapple early on, but I just don't think he's going to have any success there. You know, I think all it's going to take is Elijah Smith to land on him one time, and he's probably going to go down a downward spiral from there. So I like Elijah Smith in this a lot. Very high confidence pick, my most high confidence pick on this one. So next up, we got Roman Dolidze versus Anthony Hernandez. Now, I know everyone's on Fluffy heavy this week, and I'm picking Fluffy to win here. But I think people are sleeping on Roman Dolidze, man. Roman Dolidze is a marauder, man. He does not give up. He does not back down. He's never been finished. And the thing with Fluffy is that, yes, he's on a really good streak right now. Yes, he's good. And stats-wise, you know, he actually is the better striker in pretty much every regard in the striking stats, which is interesting. And we just know Dolidze is a bit of a, you know, he's a marauder. He's really just going to push through and toughen out and outbeat guys, and you can't finish him. You know, he hasn't been finished. And I like Fluffy to win this. He should be able to win the grappling exchanges. He should be able to use his cardio as a weapon, especially in a 5-round fight like this one. But it's tough, man, because if you look at Fluffy's record, you know, a lot of the guys that he's beaten, there have been cardio issues, or he's beaten them because they've gassed. Like Michel Pereira, bad cardio. Vieira, when he subbed him, that was because he death gassed. You know, when he beat Brendan Allen, it's because Brendan Allen death gassed. And who else did he beat? I mean, even before that, he got knocked out by Kevin Holland, which wasn't a great look. It's like, there are definitely some red flags in Fluffy's record. It's like, yeah, it looks great on paper, but when you really dive into it, a lot of his wins, and especially some submissions too, are really when guys gas out and death gas, where Dolidze has good cardio. He's gone 5 rounds multiple times in the UFC, and he's being slept on here, especially considering these odds. I almost had it as a trap, but because of these odds, but they're just close enough to where I'm like, yeah, I guess Fluffy has the better trajectory, but I think Roman Dolidze is looking the best he's ever looked in the UFC. At 37, he is not washed. He still has good fights ahead of him, regardless of the outcome of this one. And I think he has a decent chance. You know, I think if anyone's going to come out hot and come out early looking good, it's probably going to be Dolidze. You know, because we know with Anthony Hernandez, we know that he starts to look better as fights go on because he uses his cardio as a weapon to guys that can't keep up with his pace, you know. But Dolidze has good cardio. Dolidze, and that's the thing too with Fluffy. Fluffy uses his grappling because he's normally such a better grappler than his opponents, and he kind of relies on that to be able to win in the later stages of the fight, especially with the cardio. But we know that Roman Dolidze is a very good grappler. He is a very high, well-regarded grappler, so I think the grappling is going to be very close. I don't think anyone's going to have some huge edge over the other. So for this, the line to be so wide, it's kind of surprising to me. I didn't think it was going to be this wide. And there was one stat I wanted to say too. I was looking at their control time between the two of these guys. I can't find it right now, but it was between the two of them. They both control their opponents, or they win 81% of the clinch in the control time on the ground between both of them. which is interesting to me. I'm trying to find it. Let me pull this up. What was it at? Yeah, their control rate of their time in the clinch and on the ground, they both win 81% of the total time, which is kind of crazy because it's like for these odds to be this wide and grappling is the strength for both of these fighters, it's a bit crazy that they have dead even stats for the control percentage of the clinch and ground rate. So this is one I'm a little bit hesitant on just because these guys are both very high level. They're both looking very good in their last couple fights. So for one to be such a huge favorite compared to the other, it's kind of crazy to me. So I have it as a low confidence pick. Still going with Fluffy, but I would not be super surprised if Dolidze won this fight. I would not be surprised at all. So anyway, next up, we got Lucindo versus Hill. Now, I talked about this in my full card breakdown previously, but I like Lucindo. I think she has a decent future in the UFC just because she's proven to be successful at such a young age. That has to account for something. You know what I mean? That has to matter in the grand scheme of things. But she just doesn't have that killer instinct where she's not pushing a super high pace. She's not really going out there to like, I want to finish girls. You know, like I really want to get in there and I want to make it ugly and I want to do anything it takes to win. She kind of gets out there and she looks a little starstruck. She almost looks like confused in there at times, a bit hesitant. And it just doesn't make me really confident in her abilities. Like if she's not gonna, I feel like the mindset is half the battle, like GSP said, and she doesn't really seem to have that like dog locked in mentality. And going against the girl like Angela Hill has that. She's tough. She's not always the most technical fighter, but she has the dog in her and she's never going to quit. She's never going to give up. So for dog money, I think it's definitely a dog or pass situation. I think all the values on Hill, I'm picking her this week ever so slightly. You know, I've gone back and forth. I've almost pick flipped because the main thing is just the age gap. The age gap is so huge, and the statistics on age gaps this big in the UFC are absolutely insane. They favor the younger fighters so significantly. It's kind of ridiculous. So the stats wise, they do point to Lucindo. So that's why I keep going back and forth in this. I'm probably going to wait until weigh-ins for my official pick on this. I'm going Angela Hill for now, but low confidence pick for sure. Alrighty, next up, we got Andre Fili versus Christian Rodriguez. Now, I like Christian Rodriguez in this fight. He's the younger fighter. His career trajectory has really been on the upward. You know, I know he's had his setbacks here and there, but he's looked really good throughout his UFC career. Yeah, his weight is a bit of a concern, you know, like I know he's had some issues when he was down a weight class. It was hard for him to make it. Now he's fighting up, and he's been here for a little bit. You know, he's had decent success. And I think a lot of people aren't super confident in C-Rod this week to get it done, but I personally am. I think Fili is a good fighter. You know, I like Touchy-Fili. You know, he's a good dude. I like him a lot as a person. And I think he's probably the better raw striker, but I just don't know exactly where he's at. You know, he just had a kid. Career-wise, he's not going for the belt anymore. There's no real opportunities for him to do anything great with his career. He's so famous now. He's made his money. I think his head is just starting to move outside of the UFC. In the recent fights, too, his fight against Costa where he got subbed super quick, that wasn't a good look. I think he lost the fight against Cub Swanson before that. And Cub Swanson's so older now. It's like, I just don't like the trajectory that Fili's on. And it's hard to say where he's at. You know, the durability doesn't help him out either. He just doesn't have a ton going for him in his UFC career anymore. Just like, it seems like the whole picture is kind of saying, how involved, how engaged is Fili at this point? It's hard to say. Where at least with C-Rod, we know he's dialed in, he's locked in, he's beating up and coming prospects in good fashion. He has the durability to last. I just think if he starts to lose any striking exchanges, he can go to the clinch, he can win in the clinch, he can make it nasty against the cage, land takedowns if he needs them. I just think he can win this fight however he wants to or needs to. You know, where if Fili can't get the success going with the feet, the striking on the feet, you know, from range, I just don't know how else he's really going to win here. You know, he was struggling against the cage against Cub Swanson, and I think C-Rod would have a lot more success in the clinch work against Fili than Cub Swanson would. So, I don't know. It's just really hard to have a ton of confidence in Fili. I feel like everything's pointing towards C-Rod. I feel like these odds are actually pretty accurate, and I think it's a decently playable line this week, considering what it is. So, I like C-Rod. I think he should win this fight, but not super confident, so I have him as a medium confidence pick for that reason. Next up, We got Eryk versus Christian Leroy Duncan. Now, I like CLD in this one. He has every way to win this. He's the better striker. He's younger. He's longer. He has every method to win this fight. Eryk, this is his last fight in the UFC. He announced it. This is his retirement fight. His contract is up after this. He's doing stuff in real estate now. He's not physically or mentally checked in with the UFC anymore. He's done being a fighter. He's ready to go out the door. He's ready to walk. So you can't have any confidence in someone that's already looking out the door. So for that reason, everything's going for CLD. I have him as a high confidence pick and not a lock though, because CLD has just proven not to have that dog killer instinct going for the kill. When his fight against Pulev, he cost me. I had him by the KO prop, and it was like he intentionally sold it. It felt like he took the over on that because I don't know what the hell he was thinking or doing. He could have had the KO, but just simply didn't want to go for it. So on one hand, you're like, all right, that doesn't make me confident in you. But then on the other hand, you're thinking, all right, maybe he's just smart. Maybe he's going for the 300 IQ, or not that crazy, but maybe he's just playing it smart and like, all right, I could beat this guy however I want. Let me just take the path of least resistance and just hug this guy, clinch him up against the cage, put the work on him towards the end of the rounds, make it clearly in my favor, and walk away unharmed because I'm not going for some big bombs, where he could land back on me. Who knows? It pissed me off because I had money on his KO prop, but you got to take him this week. I think Eryk, especially too, we've seen him chinned in just about all of his recent fights. Yeah, I think he only has one knockout loss on his record, but his chin has just been cracked over and over and over again. So does he get knocked out this week? Who knows what CLD is going to go for or not go for, but I think he has the power and the abilities to knock him out. If he actually does and goes for it, who knows? But I think every single aspect is pointing towards CLD, minus the pure dog in him going for the kill, but I just don't think something like that would be enough for Anders, and especially with this being his last fight and him retiring after this, I don't think he's going to really have that dog in him to push it as hard as he could either. So I like CLD a lot in this one. High confidence pick. But next up, we got Cody Brundage versus Eryk McConico. I got Cody Brundage as a medium confidence pick this week. I think the value's there. I think he's actually a pretty accurate line for what it is. Not how it opened, but where it's at right now, he's like a minus 170 or something like that. And Cody Brundage, he's had his ups and downs. He's really had a lot of BS go on behind the scenes. Some of it may be his fault, some of it maybe not. You can have your own opinions on that, but I think he's proven enough to say, all right, this guy can hang in the UFC. Cody Brundage can win against guys that he should beat, but the upper level guys, yeah, he's not going to beat them. I think Cody Brundage is definitely UFC caliber, or we just don't know the same against Eryk McConico yet. We just don't know how he's really going to look. We saw him get worked by Ruzaboyev in his UFC debut, but that was short notice. It was UFC debut, bright lights. It's kind of crazy. He was really timid in that fight. He didn't want to engage all that much, but it's really hard to blame a guy stepping up short notice on his UFC debut. So you can't blame him for that. He should be more used to it now. I think he should look a little bit more comfortable in there, but at the same time, he's not proven anything at the UFC level. Cody Brundage has. And yeah, Cody Brundage could put anyone out too. That's the thing. McConico, his losses have been from knockouts. He's been clipped multiple times, and Cody Brundage has the power to put people out. So if anything's leaning like in terms of the power, they're both not super durable, but I think Brundage definitely has the power edge here in this fight. So if anyone's getting knocked out, I think Cody Brundage likely gets McConico out relatively early. McConico could try and drag it out, but I think it's going to be some fireworks going on here early. I think Cody Brundage likely gets the knockout win, so I like him in this one. Next up, we got Gabriella Fernandes versus Julius Stoliarenko. Now, I got Gabriella Fernandes as a confident, very high confident pick this week because she has every way to win this fight. Pretty much the only way Julia is going to be able to win this fight is if she can get a submission, because, she's basically a BJJ submission, one-trick pony, and if she can't get the submission, she's pretty much screwed. We've seen that from every single fight. She's sub or bust. And once people start really wailing on her and putting the beat down on her, she does not want to hang. She does not want to get hit. I mean, for good reason, but you can tell she's not built for the striking. She just wants to make it ugly on the ground, go for the arm bar, and that's about it. Because now I was worried not super worried, but I was interested, a bit hesitant, because I was like, all right, yeah, Julija doesn't really have the takedowns to go take it to the ground, but I was like, I wanted to look at their stats and compare, the takedown accuracy versus the takedown defense. And For Julija, her takedown accuracy is only 28%. She shot 5 for 18 takedowns. So, all right, that side looks good to me. And I looked at Gabriella Fernandes, and her takedown defense is 61%, where she's conceded 9 and she's been faced with 23. So that shows enough to me to where I'm like, all right, she should be able to hang. It's not like Julija really has some good takedown accuracy stats. There's not showing that she can really land that many takedowns at the UFC level. And it's like, all right, for Fernandes, she has good enough takedown defense to where if she gets to the ground, it's likely her screwing herself and doing something stupid. It's like it should be her battle to lose in the sense of the takedown. So I think she's going to be the much better striker. She has more power in the hands. She's going to be likely stronger all around. Julia's really, she's the damn armbar or bust sub one trick pony. So for that reason, you're taking someone who's a one trick pony versus a decently well-rounded mixed martial artist. Yeah, she might not be as good on the ground, but she should be good enough to keep it on the feet, especially with the takedown defense. So everything points to Gabriella Fernandes as long as she can keep it on the feet. So for that reason, she's a high confidence pick for me this week. Now, next up, we got Miles Johns versus Jean Matsumoto. I got this as my very low confidence pick this week. I almost had it as a trap. Same thing, kind of like the Dolidze versus Hernandez, just because of the line. I think both of these lines should be a lot tighter than they are. I like Jean Matsumoto. I think he has a lot more potential in the UFC probably than Miles Johns does, because Johns just doesn't really hasn't lived up to the potential that he could be. He has decent wrestling. He has decent striking, but he just doesn't really go to that wrestling. He just kind of wants to crash out on the feet, throw bombs, make it ugly. And it's guys that are more technical than him can really exploit that. It's like he's never really stood out to me thinking, all right, like this guy has potential. That's never really happened with me with Miles Johns. And I get like, yeah, Matsumoto, he's had his own struggles in the UFC so far, like the Rob Font fight. Like there are definitely moments where he hasn't looked maybe as great as people hyped him up to be, but I still think he has the higher skill, like potential, like he has more range to go and grow as a fighter as the years progress. And he's so young that he's going to keep looking better with every single fight. So I do think there's a very good chance he wins this fight. I think it's a lot closer than the line suggests, and I would not be surprised if Miles Johns wins at all. And he's durable enough to hang too. So I'm like, both of these guys are durable. This looks like it has a split decision written all over it. So for one guy to be a -3 something seems a bit far to me. So that's why it's so low on this in terms of the confidence rating. I'm going with Jean Matsumoto, but I could see anything happening here. But we just got to assume that Jean Matsumoto is going to look better and better with every fight, where it's hard to say the same with Miles Johns. And especially, too, with both of these guys have a similar build. It's like, yeah, we saw Jean struggle against Rob Font, but he was taller and lengthier, and he was a good striker. That's what he's known for. So it made sense why Jean struggled a little bit there. But I think Miles Johns should be the type of guy to where it matches him. They match each other in terms of their size and their build. So he's going to be more comfortable in this type of a matchup versus Rob Font. So I like Jean, but low confidence pick. Next up, medium confidence pick, Julius Walker versus Rafael Cachoeira. Now, I like Julius Walker, and I think he has a decent potential. He's younger than he looks. I thought he was older, and then I looked at the stats. I'm like, oh, damn, he's actually younger than I thought. And I think he's like 26 or 27, but he looks like mid-30s. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I thought he looked a little bit older, but I like what he's doing. I think he's taking his career very seriously. He's training full time. He's pretty much lives in his gym. I've watched interviews of him, and I said in my last video too, after that Alonzo Menifield fight, he was like very adamant about like, yeah, my cardio was what cost me in that fight, but that's something I can fix, and I'm really working on to never have that problem again inside the UFC. So I like when someone has the awareness to be like, all right, I have an issue here. I'm going to fix it. I want to patch that hole in my game, and I like that. Julius Walker seems to be that type of fighter, the type of guy to be as well-rounded as possible and to actively work on his weak points in his game. So I like him a lot, and I think he has potential in the UFC. It's hard to say exactly how good he's going to do, but you got to give him a lot of credit. He stepped up on short notice and went to a split decision against Alonzo Menifield, top, 15th ranked in the UFC right now? So you got to put some respect on his name for that, especially as a UFC debut. Very impressive to me. So against a guy like Rafael Cachoeira, he's just looked absolutely terrible in both of his 2 UFC fights, getting knockout losses in the first round and both of them back-to-back. Not a good look. The Ibo Aslan one hasn't aged well either, so it's like you got all the the momentum, the trajectory going for Julius Walker. I like that a lot more than the little things that we've seen from Rafael Cachoeira. Nothing great. So you got to go with Julius Walker on this. It's just the line is so blown out. Considering both of these guys are so green inside the UFC, it's really hard to put that big of a -6, -700 price tag on a guy like Julius Walker since he's so fresh. So it's hard to get behind that, but still medium confidence pick. He should win this fight. So now, lastly, we got the last one of the day. Boom. Trap of the card, Erceg versus Gilbert Urbina. Now, I have this as the trap of the card because something like, there's a public consensus that Urbina is just going to come here and just run right through Gilbert Urbina. But I don't know if that's going to necessarily be the case here. Now, when you look on paper, you're like, all right, Erceg, he's a good striker. He should be able to go through Gilbert Urbina. Urbina's been chinned multiple times, bad knockout losses. But then you think, all right, Euros has been finished in all of his pro losses as well. So it's like, yeah, he's a finisher, but he gets finished. And all of his wins are so early, he's never seen the scorecards. We don't know how he does if this fight goes on into the later rounds. Does he have the cardio to keep up with that? Who knows? And the thing with Gilbert Urbina, too, is that, yeah, he's not going to be anywhere near as good in the feet. He's the far superior or inferior striker. But the thing is, it's like, we know his game plan. He's going to shoot and he's going to go for takedowns. He just got knocked out badly in his last loss. He took a lot of time off, so we don't really know exactly how he's going to look, how he's improved from this time. Who knows what he's going to look like. And I get why people are like, oh, well, he's just going to be rusty. He's not going to look very good. Uros is a striker. When he gets to the ground, we've seen guys like Orobai who, yeah, Orobai is really good. So it's like that's a bit of a tough one-to-one comparison. You can't compare him to Gilbert Urbina, but at the same time, we've seen him struggle with the grappling. He wants to keep it on the feet, and he gets all of his wins so early that we don't know how the fight could go if it extends. And the small cage, we know Urbina is going to have the reach advantage. He's going to have the grappling advantage, and he knows that's his only way to win. So all these people are loading up on the Medici KO line, and while I do think that that very easily could hit, if I had to pick one prediction outcome for this fight, I do think it is Uros by knockout. But if this fight extends, if Gilbert manages to get out of the first round, he lands a takedown, he dominates on the ground, who knows what Uros is going to look like at that point. Maybe at that point, maybe he starts to get tired, maybe he starts to gas out. He's not going to have as much pump or as much power in his punches. If this fight gets out of the first round and a half, if this goes over the 1.5, I don't know. I'd be very, very hesitant. That's why I have this as a trap. If this was a closer line, especially we just saw Uros get knocked out cold in his last loss. If this line was closer, if it was a -200-ish, I'd be like, all right, that's fair, because I think it's a lot closer. We've seen him get clipped. He doesn't have the durability. All of his losses have been finishes, 2 of them by submission. We know Gilbert is going to have the grappling advantage. He's going to have the wrestling advantage. If he takes us to the ground, he's going to win. He's going to dominate in terms of on the ground. So, especially we've never seen Uros go to a decision. So we don't know if he gets out of the first and second round. Is he going to death gas? Nobody knows. We're not going to be able to tell how he does if it gets to that point, especially with the grappling heavy game plan too. For strikers like Uros, sure, I bet he can definitely kickbox for 3 rounds, no problem. But when you implement the grappling, if Gilbert's able to land takedowns and maybe Gilbert gets to his back and he has to carry his weight on his back, that is going to wear Uros out. So I would be very hesitant to just throw Uros Medic in every single parlay for the -450 he's at right now. Absolutely insane. I think Gilbert has a much better chance than the -450 suggests he does. So I would say if anything is a trap this week, this is the trap line. Now, do I think Gilbert wins? It's hard to say, but if I had to pick a trap, it definitely would be this. And for these odds, that's why I have it as the trap of the week. So, and I know, no lock. I don't necessarily think there's a real lock for this card, but didn't want to make anyone mad for not having a single lock. If I had to pick a single lock for this card, I would do the Elijah Smith. Just because, like we talked about, he has every way to win this fight, and Kazama doesn't really have the tools to implement his own game plan. Elijah Smith is going to have the better wrestling. He's going to have the better striking. He has the better durability. Kazama, yes, he might have the better pure BJJ submission ability on the ground, but he doesn't have the wrestling ability to get it there. And Elijah Smith doesn't have the wrestling gap or hole in his game to be exploited. So it's like there's no way for Kazama to be able to have his way in this fight. It's only if Elijah Smith messes up or death gasses, like we saw how Kazama beat Gregorio in his fight, where he just death gassed. And Elijah Smith, he's been working on his cardio, so it's gotten better and better. So I'm even more confident in that side of things. It's more a fight IQ. If he is going to blow it, it's going to be on him if he loses it. So I like Elijah Smith a lot here. I was this close to putting him as a lock too. That's why, if I had to pick a lock, it would definitely be him, just because there's the least amount of things to go wrong for him. Realistically, I think probably Stoliarenko has a better chance at landing the submission over Fernandes than Kazama does of landing a submission over Smith. That's why if I had to pick one of those, because they're kind of in the same boat, I would pick definitely Smith over that. So if I had to pick a lock, this would be the one. But anyway, guys, that does it for the Locks and Traps video for UFC Vegas 109 Dolidze versus Hernandez. If you guys like the video, you like the series, please drop a like. Please leave a comment. Let me know. Subscribe. All that stuff helps me out so much. It means a ton. It helps the algorithm, helps me grow, and it helps me know that you guys like these videos, and I'll keep making them. So thank you guys so much for all the support on the recent videos. It's been insane the amount of growth we've had recently. Thank you guys so much for all that. It means a ton. And it's been awesome. So I got more videos coming. I got my weigh-in recap video tomorrow coming out, so stay tuned for that. And I got a betting breakdown video coming on Saturday, so make sure to stay tuned for those. We had an absolutely insane week last week. 7-0 clean sweep on the betting slate last week. Go check out those videos if you haven't seen it. So make sure you stay tuned for this week. I got a couple lines that I'm really liking this week. So anyway, guys, that does it. It's your boy Jacob from Topside MMA. Thank you guys so much for watching once again. And until I see you guys in the next one, peace.